It was a wedding, though. Is that what you said? Was it a wedding?
Yes, I went to a wedding.
Cool. All right. So, Foundry, I took some notes, but obviously, if you guys have specific questions, just throw them out there. Um, so first of all, to use Foundry, you do have to pay. You have to pay for it, but it's one time. It's not a subscription, which is good. And anything regarding the Foundry tool, the website is foundryvtt.com. So if you go there, you set up an account, and then there's a purchase button.
Sorry about that.
I know where you are. But you buy it and then download it. So it runs as an app, even though the app is really a browser running inside of the app. So you can still hit like F5 and it refreshes just like you do when you play the game. But that shouldn't matter to you. Something that Bree already ran into when she went through this is if you're running it on a laptop or a desktop with maybe a not so great monitor, you do have to make sure that you turn the Windows resolution to pretty high. Otherwise, Foundry doesn't like to run in a smaller resolution, or I guess that'd be a bigger resolution, depending on how you look at it. But besides, I don't remember, but it's more than 1020 by 768. I know that. It's like the next level up, 1220 by 960, maybe something like that. Which on a laptop, usually you can get to that, but it's not set there by default because it makes everything really small to see. So they're capable, but they don't default to it for that reason. But once you get it installed, then you basically have what I'm looking at, which is the Foundry Virtual Tabletop. You probably have to copy and paste the software key from the Foundry VTT site. I don't remember the exact steps of the install because it's been 8 months or so since I did it. But okay, cool. So once you're in there,
I already have it. I already have it downloaded. Everything. I already have modules and stuff added. I just need help on like tweaks with scenes and how to import images.
okay, cool. Dottie, have you gone through any of this like the setup process?
Okay, so I have the program set up,
Mm-hmm.
and I have like I've gone in and I've downloaded some mods and stuff. But I can't do anything. Like I don't know how to set up a scene. I'm not sure how to
Okay.
set up a grid or anything like that. But go from the beginning or whatever.
Okay. Well, I'm also recording this just so I can possibly post it for anyone else who's interested that isn't able to get on the schedule. So
Perfect.
I'm going to go through basic stuff, even if you've already passed it. And who knows, maybe you'll hear something that you didn't realize when I go over it. But so the Foundry system itself has basically 3 areas. One is game worlds, and those are the worlds that you build to run your games in. Then you've got game systems, which game system is actually the prerequisite of everything. So this is which game system you want to run, because Foundry can run pretty much any game system that's out there. I mean, there's like over 100. I don't even know what these things are. But the one that you're looking for in our case would be the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, which is also created by Foundry, which is good. Anything created by Foundry tends to work really well. Outside of Foundry, good luck. But you do have to have that system in place in order to create a world, because when you create a world, the first thing it wants to know is which game system is this world going to use. And then you've got add-on modules, which I planned on covering later because they are optional. Definitely not required just to run a game of D&D. And the D&D game system is not, is free. You don't have to pay for that. So far, the only thing you had to pay for was the $50. But once you've got a game system installed, then you go to Game Worlds and you can click on Create World and call it whatever you want. I'll call it Charlie World. And like I said, there's a drop down that asks which game system are you using, and we're going to use Dungeons and Dragons. Just FYI, I have another one called Crucible. Crucible is a game system that Foundry developed themselves. It's very much like Dungeons and Dragons, but different rules, different mechanics. It's just something I've been playing with. But that's all you have to do at this point is give it a name and select the system and then create world. And then you'll see it show up under your list of worlds. I have a bunch of worlds because I'm always playing with stuff. But you can see here that it has Charlie World. And the background image comes from the default from the Dungeons and Dragons game system. You could replace that later if you want. And then when you click on the world, you get to the login page. Very similar to the login page that your players will see. There's always a game master user, which would be you. And by default, there's no password. So you would just click on join game session. And you are in emptiness. And then I'm going to go over the left panel and the right panel. Again, I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, but just to make sure it's kind of understood what these things do, because knowing is half the battle. So on the left side, you've got the far left and then the inner left. The inner left is contextual menu based on what you have selected on the far left. And by default, it is on token controls. So that's usually what you're on while you're playing so that you can click on people's tokens or monster tokens and targeting and all that stuff. Below that is the measurement controls, which you and players have access to so that you can measure the distance between one point and another. The third one is tile controls. So tile controls is sort of an advanced thing that makes different automations within your scenes possible. Some of them need modules, or some of the things you would want to do with tile controls needs modules, but basically, trying to give a basic example, if you wanted to, you could make it to where you have a trap on your map, and if the users move their token onto that trap, it'll trigger something. You would use a tile control where that tile You would use a tile control where that trap is, and then the tile control has properties. It has triggers and events and such. That's one example of.
Sorry.
No problem. Go ahead.
Those are also where trees are, right?
If you've got like the background and foreground layer, they can be, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then the pencil is drawing. It's just what it says, but you can draw shapes and circles, just kind of pointing things out. That's the only reason I really use them. Wall controls. If you create your own maps, or if you find an image of a map just by Googling it and bring it into Foundry, you can use that for a scene, but you guys have noticed when playing that, especially if it's a dungeon or in a building where you can't move your token through walls, or the lighting adjust depending on where you're moving with shadows and such. All of that is done with wall controls. So you can bring in any image that you want, but to really make a map playable, you typically will have to use wall controls to basically draw the dimensions of where the walls are for that map so that Foundry knows how to deal with it. And then the next one, the light bulb, is lighting controls. Same thing. So you bring in an image, any image that you want to be a map, that's fine. And then you use light controls to place any kind of light source. Like there's a picture of a campfire on the image. If you want to make it glow, then you would put a light control on it and tinker with the color and the different visual effect. Torch is one of them, so it looks like it's emanating a fire, for example, or it's some magical thing. There's a fairy something animation for light that looks really cool. And then the next one is ambient sound. This one I haven't even started using yet, but ambient sound, it's kind of like a light control in that you drop it on a very specific part of the map. So it makes sense if you have a torch on a wall, you would drop a light control right where that torch is, and then mess with the properties. Ambient sound is you have a sound file that you want to play, but based on how close a token is to that spot. So for example, if you've got a map of a decent sized dungeon, one of the rooms of the dungeon is underwater and it's dripping water. You could put an ambient sound control into the middle of that room, add, from somewhere you find a sound file that's the sound of dripping water, and then put that ambient sound into the middle of the room, like I said. And then when people are playing, when players start getting closer to that room, that drip sound starts getting louder and louder. So that's ambient sound. Region controls, the next one. I don't use that. I know what it is, but I can't remember what it is. Oh, well, we'll come back to it. And journal notes it's just placing. So you've got journal entries on the right, which we'll talk about here shortly. But a journal note is where you can drag a very specific part of a journal, either the whole journal or a specific chapter or a specific page. You can drop a little icon for it on the map just so that, you've probably seen maps where each room has a number and each number is referred to in whatever book that talks about the adventure. So in the game, those numbered things that you click on, it'll open up that page. Those are journal notes. And then right side, you've got chat messages, which everybody's aware of for chatting, but also the combat gameplay is heavily done in here for attacks and damage and etc. The next one is the combat encounters, which you also see as a player. As the DM, you create these encounters, and I'll show you how to do that here in a bit. And then scenes, these are all of your maps. So a map and a scene, kind of synonymous. And then the person looking one, actors. As a player, you have access to this area, and typically you would see your character and only your character. As the dungeon master, you see, of course, all the player characters, but this can also be where monsters are, where non-player characters are. If they have a token represented in a scene, then they probably have, they're probably represented here under characters. And then under characters are items. So these are usually they're things that you drop onto characters, mostly inventory stuff. So if you have a special, like a homebrew weapon, for example, you can have that homebrew weapon here in items. And if someone finds it, loots it, whatever, then you could drag it into their character sheet from here. But this is kind of an inventory of items that are easily put into character sheets. And the next one is journal. So these are the books, the text entries, the PDF files, anything that you're using to help you run the session. Could be just notes. And in fact, you can also give users permission to this area so that, especially on a longer campaign, they can create their own journals, keep track of their own notes. You just don't want them to see the Dungeon Master journal entries, obviously. And then rollable tables. It's a table that is usually assigned to a certain roll, a D10, a D20, a D100, to get random outcomes. Card stacks, I've never seen used. I know, like in Curse of Strahd, there's a deck of cards that are important in that campaign. So they would probably be found here. There's something called the Deck of Things. You could have a deck of things in here, but I've not seen anyone use it. Myself, my GMs, any videos I've ever watched. So I'm sure there's a good use of it, but I've not seen it. And the next one is macros. Macros are definitely an advanced topic of Foundry. I have not had to go into them too much. And I have a software developer background, but I'm trying not to get that deep into Foundry just yet, because I'm still just trying to learn to use it before I start learning to program it. But behind the scenes, Foundry obviously is a software system, and everything you see has a way for developers to tie into it. And a macro is just like a very simplified way to tie into the system. For example, what's that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, as a player, I've created macros for some of my attacks and some of my damage, because my different weapons do different things, and sometimes it's a little confusing using D&D Beyond, so I'll just create little macros so that it just, each attack or each damage kind of comes up in its own line.
Yeah.
Yeah, just at the play.
And actually, every item in Foundry has macros built into it under the hood. And typically in Foundry, we use this macro area to do something that's very conditional, like in one of my campaigns, I have a non-player character that's a doppelganger, and the doppelganger transforms into really two different characters as part of that campaign. And so there's a macro in there that literally changes the token of the doppelganger between the three states, whether it's the actual doppelganger skin, or it's a drow elf skin, or it's this human skin. So there's nowhere to do that within the character sheet itself. So you have this macro that lets you do it. Or you could use it to toggle weather or toggle music. I mean, anything really you could have a macro for. But I haven't spent a lot of time in here. But yeah, definitely useful. And then the next one, playlists. So as a user, as a player, you only can adjust your personal volumes. But as a Dungeon Master, you can create playlists and add songs to them. You can use any sound files you can find on the internet, but there's modules, of course, that focus on music. A lot of them are free, so you can get a lot of stuff for free. But anytime you've been in one of my games and you hear sound, background music, those come from playlists. And you can assign a playlist to a scene so that as soon as you open the scene, it's automatically starting to play that music. Or you can say, as soon as combat is triggered, then play this combat playlist that I have. And Foundry's smart enough to know that when you're in combat, play this and stop the other one. But when combat ends, stop the combat one and go back to whatever the playlist was for just the scene. And then compendium packs. These are, it's it's content that comes from either the game system. So these default to the D&D Modern and D&D Legacy. Those are compendiums that the game system is providing, the Dungeons and Dragons game system. As you install modules, not all of them, but most of them add content here. And then these compendiums can have scenes in them. They can have actors in them. They can have items in them. They can have journal entries, rollable tables. So it's kind of like the playbook of your game that you can choose to use and bring them into your game or not. But as a dungeon master, you spend a lot of time in the compendium area. And then you got the game settings, which pretty self-explanatory. As players, you have access to, it almost looks exactly the same, but obviously as a dungeon master, you'll have a lot more settings that you can control under configure settings, manage modules. You can install modules, but they're not going to be used inside of your world until you go into manage modules and enable them. So this is where you would enable and disable modules, etc. And we'll come back to the modules. We'll come back to user management. Rest of it, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. One thing that's definitely an advanced topic, and I have it on my notes to talk about, but not until we get through the gist of how to run the game. But there is the matter of how do you host the game. So I run all my games here on my computer using my install of Foundry. But in order for you guys to have access to it, I had to know how to go to my internet router and open up a port, all that stuff, so that people from the outside on the internet have access to come in and access my game on a single port, which is by default this 30,000 port at the end. That takes a little bit of setup and a little bit of knowledge outside of the scope of Foundry. But the other option, and the way I started, was I found there's a lot of hosting services that host Foundry. And you can actually do quite a bit for free. I don't think I ever paid for it. The only reason I left the hosted one and came to a local one is because I started creating a lot more worlds. And once you figure out what settings and what modules you want for your worlds, to have to create a new world and start all over again is painful. So locally, I have a world that I keep all of my settings in. And if I create a new world, then I'm able to copy those settings into my new world. So I have a new world with all of my basic settings instantly. I couldn't figure out a way to do that when I was hosting or using hosting services online. So that was why I made the change. Also, when you install Foundry, it's kind of important to understand where things live on your computer in the file system. So for me, on my computer, I have a C drive and an E drive. The E drive is much bigger, and that's usually where I install my applications. And so on my E drive, you can see I have this Foundry virtual tabletop folder. That's the installation of Foundry. So that's where the app got installed. But I think it's a part of the installation process. It asks you, where do you want to put the data, the Foundry data? It needs to be in a different folder from the application itself. So I just created it and called it Foundry VTT data. And this is where anything that you add to Foundry, so any game system, any world you create, any modules you add, all of that comes into this folder. And that will be important to understand once you start building your worlds and adding scenes and, I need to add some portraits, and I need to add some fancy map assets. All of those things go into this data area, and within that area, they go to a very specific set of directories. So
Question, because I've already worked in this a bit, so I already have my stuff, like, I already downloaded Foundry and I have it in my downloads and stuff like that, and I've already started creating like folders separately for the campaign. Like, I already have a folder that says for the type of campaign, then I have a folder that says like what scenes I already have. So you would suggest moving it to the E drive instead of having everything on the
Oh, no. My computer, the way it is set up, I install everything into an E drive. You may not even have that. I have multiple drives in my computer. So I'm a nerd. I've been in technology since before you were born. So that's just my way of doing it. As long as you understand where you have Foundry installed and where it keeps your world and scenes and all of that, then you're fine. It's just knowing that exists and where they are is going to help you down the road.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So actually, since I already went into this, I was going to do it until a little bit later. But when you dig into this data directory, there are parts of this that Foundry is just controlling, almost all of it. It's this data directory within the Foundry data directory. This is where stuff you care about lives. So if I click there, you can see, for example, there's a systems, modules, and worlds folders. So systems is where the different game systems you install are. So you can see there's 2 directories in here because I have 2 game systems installed. Or if I back up, if I go to worlds, every time I create a world, it creates a folder in here. So each one of these directories is a separate game world that I created. And so that's where they exist. Inside of each of these worlds are going to be its scenes, its actors, all of those things. And then coming back out to that data folder again, there's also a modules directory. So every time I add a module, it's creating a directory for that module, and whatever that module is needing is inside of here. It could be compendiums, it could be macros, it could be actors, it could be maps, could be any. It just depends on what that module is doing as to what's going to be in that directory. And then the last folder that you care about is this assets folder. So you, by default, or when you first install, you're only going to have the 4 folders I just mentioned: assets, modules, systems, worlds. These other folders are something that modules that I added created for some reason. I don't even know why. It seems that they're not supposed to be here, but they got created there. But usually you would have just those, the 5. The reason why you have an assets folder is anytime you need to bring in a file from outside of Foundry, outside of modules that you're installing, you are providing the files. Like you find a map, you Google, that you want a spooky map in a cave, and you find one that you like, you download that file. So this is what I'm talking about. So you download that somewhere on your computer. When you go to create a scene, Foundry is going to expect the file that is the image for the scene to be inside of the Foundry directory structures. So it's going to be looking in here and saying, okay, well, where's the file? Well, it's probably not in here because you probably downloaded it to your downloads folder or to your desktop, something like that. But when you bring those files into Foundry, they go into assets. At least that's the intention. So if I open up this assets, all of these files are things that I brought into Foundry myself. manually. So there's all sorts of things in here, mostly images. So when you see this recording again, this is very important. This is something that tripped me up a lot in the beginning, especially if you try to create a world from scratch by yourself. In other words, you're not buying, there's content you can buy that has all of it done for you. But you can also do all of it yourself. And if you do it all yourself, then you're going to need to understand this folder structure for sure. Let's see. So kind of going through the steps. So if I were to create everything myself, I would, well, I'm going to start with creating a player character. I'm not going to go, well, never mind. I am going to go pretty far into it because it explains other things. So when I go to create an actor, this actually updated recently. So it changed a little bit. It has a lot more options than it did just a couple of months ago. Because you see that you have a lot of different types than just a player character. But first I'm going to create a player character called Fred, and I just have to make sure that I say that this is a player character. And then this actual character sheet is coming from the D&D game system. So it's just a part of that system that provides that. By default, obviously, this is a blank, empty, there's nothing to it. It's not even a template. It's just an empty character sheet with no characteristics whatsoever. But I can see here on the main, the details tab, that there's an add species and an add background. If I click add species, it's opening something called the compendium browser. And these are all of the species available based on the content that I currently have in Foundry. Since I have not installed any modules, that means this data can only be coming from one place, and that's the Dungeons and Dragons game system. And it's coming from these two compendiums, the D&D Modern, so that's 2024. D&D Legacy is 2014. In their language, for some reason, I don't know why, but 2014 is SRD 5.1. 2024 is SRD 5.2. So as I'm looking at this and creating this character, it's showing me the complete list of all of those species types from 2014 and 2024. So if I click on the 5.2, then it just filtered this list. Now you can see the source is 5.2. So these are all 2024 species. When you start installing modules, one of the things that those modules can do is give you more options here. But this is the out of the box. So I can choose Dragonborn, for example, select, and then it takes me through a wizard for completing the rest of the questions necessary for doing a Dragonborn, which I'll just click through these. And then, so now you're starting to see it's kind of filling things out. Now it's got some senses and resistance. So then we can choose a background, same thing. So these are the backgrounds available. So if I click on 5.2, there's only 4. And that's because the D&D game system only has what's available with the free content, the starter kit, if you will. So this doesn't even have everything that the player's handbook provides, but it's what's available for free. So I will choose Sage. And for now, assume, I'll do, I don't know, intelligence 2 and wisdom 1. Languages, same thing. It's a limited list of languages, and that's because this is all that's available with the starter kit. So that's where the constraint is. Additional modules can get you additional options. And then this is saying that for one of my feats, the Magic Initiate, I get a spell. So again, this is opening up a compendium browser restricted to just spells. And I, again, want to say I only want to do 2024. So I do 5.2, select one of them. Same thing. Now it's 2 cantrips, 2024. I'll do whatever, acid, splash, and firebolt. And these are because of choosing the sage background. These are not the spells for the regular spell book, not yet. So I complete those. So now I can start seeing more things got added, more more attributes about my character. Oh, it's starting to fill in my skills, which ones I'm proficient in, added a tools proficiency, got a few spells in the spell book. But now to add my class, I have to come down to the features tab, and you see add class up here. So kind of getting used to this compendium browser. I want 2014, and I'll go with wizard. And so it's letting me know that I can do 3 cantrips because I'm a wizard, but it's not going to give me the options to do that right now, and 4 prepared spells. And so that's sort of the basics. That's all of the step-by-step that it gives you. Now you still need inventory, and you need to finish your spells. And to do that, you just have to find them in the compendiums. So the character classes, they have your default starting inventory. So even though it doesn't look like it, these are actually draggable. And so it should have 2 daggers. So I have to increase the quantity. You get an arcane focus. We're going to do quarterstaff, robe, spellbook, scholar's pack. Scholar's pack is a container, so it got added up here. So I have to click on that to see what all that gave me. And then it says I also get 5 gold. So I just go up to the gold and manually type that in. So that's my starting equipment from the class. The background also has starting equipment. So I have to come to the compendium, go to character origins, backgrounds, sage. And here are the equipment from there. So I get another quarterstaff, calligraphy supplies, another book, parchment, but I have to tell it that it's 8. Robe, and then 8 more gold. So I can just do plus 8, 13. So that does the equipment for me, and then spells. So with these out of the box compendiums, they're not super helpful. The spells aren't, because you don't know easily which ones are wizard spells, which ones are not. So you'd have to have a book to look those up. And I'll explain how I get around that pretty soon as well. But anyway, that's how you make a player character from scratch without any fancy tools, without using D&D Beyond, without all that good stuff. And by the way, you cannot use D&D Beyond without a very special module that you have to install. So this is everything that you can do out of the box by default. You can open the Compendium browser. So if you go to Compendium Packs, there's always going to be this open Compendium browser. And this is everything. So it's what you were seeing before, but it also added these left tabs so that you can go through all of it. So these are all of the classes available because of what compendiums you have access to. These are all the subclasses, all the species, all the feats. So as you start adding modules that expand this, it's all going to be here and available to you here from this one area. So the compendium browser, it's something that really I have a hard time remembering because I didn't learn about it till much later on. If I would have spent more time in here, it would have saved me a lot of time based on what I was doing. Oh, the next thing, maybe this isn't the best order, but since we just created the character, there is one thing that always tripped me up. So when I drag a character into a scene, I wanted it to where if you hover over their token, you can see their name because it's hard to remember everybody's characters' names. By default, it doesn't show that. It only has the token. So I would drag it onto the scene, and there's a way to do it from the token on the map. But what I didn't realize is that it was only changing it for that map. The next time I went to a new scene and brought the same player token in, that was gone, and I had to do it again. And I just thought that's what I was stuck with doing. But later I learned that there's this thing called prototype token. Prototype token is where you make those settings about the player's token on the map. But when you set them here, then it's set every time you drag them in to any map. So again, this is something that I didn't learn until much later. So I make it to where the name is showed anytime someone hovers over the token, anybody. By default, it's never displayed. And then I also go to resources and make it to where anyone that hovers over will see the health bar basically at the bottom of the token as well. So now every time I drag Fred in, he'll have the right settings for the token. All good there for the character?
Is it similar for when you're putting in NPCs?
Yes, it's just much. It's not the complete character sheet. It's a very reduced character sheet. So they don't have the concept of class and background and such. They just have, I didn't even do the ability scores. They just have the ability scores, and then you can drag in spells and feats and such. You basically have to build it yourself. There's no an NPC doesn't have the same structure that a player character does.
But can you drag, like, from the compendium, like the Black Dragon or whatever, can you drag that in to be an NPC in that campaign?
Yes, most of it you can. I don't think classes or origins. Species probably does work. Let's see. So let's just say dwarf. Yeah, that worked, even though that worked. Well, let me see if background works. Looks like it does. Yeah. So there in the compendium, there's this area called actors, which that's the section that we're in is actors. And in there, they've got a lot of creatures, what I call creatures. So when I say non-player character, that really, when I say it, I mean more of like people that you run into, like townspeople.
Interacting with.
Yeah. And that's not accurate, but that's how I do it. If you're talking about monsters, as long as it's a monster that exists in the D&D world, not something that you're creating yourself, then they do exist here under actors, and you can drag them straight from here onto your map, or you can import them. Anything in the compendiums can be imported, and that just means it's going to put it into these other areas. Like if you import an actor, it's going to put it in actors. If there was an item, well, they have rollable tables. If I imported one of these rollable tables from the compendium, it would put it into the rollable tables area. So you can do the same thing. If I say import, now that shot me back to the actors area, and now I have whatever a Balor is.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do that one from scratch at all because it is a part of the compendium. And then for scenes, your map, basically, I'll just say scene A. So the only two things you need would be a name, and then it wants to know a file path to where your background image is. So earlier I said, when I was showing you the file system, it expects the files to be within the folder's structure of Foundry. So if you notice these directories, those are the same directories that I showed you in my Foundry data area underneath the data folder. These are what is showing right here. I can't go any higher than this in my directory structure. So if it's not in here, I can't directly access it from Foundry. So if I have that file somewhere else, like on my desktop, I downloaded it, then you have to go to the assets folder inside of Foundry. And then it's hard to notice that, but now I have this upload file option. This was there, but it was grayed out because it's not going to let me upload files and dirty up Foundry's structure. So you see it here, but it's grayed out. You have to upload your stuff to the assets folder. And so I would click on choose file, and now I have access to my entire computer. So wherever I downloaded the map, an image of a map, I would click on that, open it, and it would then save it inside of the assets folder. So that's what all of these are. These are things that I have already uploaded into my Foundry system. Let me see if I can find I'm sure I have a map in here somewhere. Maybe. So that just, I mean, that's all I absolutely had to have. Now I can start dragging actor tokens in here. But there usually is more to do. For example, if you look kind of over here in the gray area, you see a square grid. But this map, this image, is expecting a hexagonal grid. So the Foundry settings are not appropriate for this image. And so you have to go into the properties of the scene, which I can do from here. And this is where you start getting into the depth of what all is necessary to make a scene work. So we have the name, we have the file. Grid is how we would change the grid style to match. So I don't even know what the difference of all of these are. Hexagonal, rows, odd, even. Interesting. So if I make that change and click OK, now you can see that the squares have become hexagons, but they don't match the size. And so that takes some tinkering. You have to play with grid size and pixels. Sometimes you have to play with the scene dimensions. If you download a file from a Foundry friendly website, they'll tell you that if you download this map, these are the settings for it. So it would tell you how to do all of this. But if you're just downloading stuff and you're doing it all by hand, then you get to learn the pain of playing with things like grids. Because if I drag a token in here right now, it would be based on these grids, not the map. The map is just an image. Again, there are modules. They can be free, they can be paid for, that have scenes built into them. And if the scene's in the module, then it would already have all of these settings done for you. I'm just kind of showing you working from scratch, worst case scenario. And then there's lighting. So there's a lot of stuff in here. There's 3 things that matter, and that's whether or not there's global illumination. So should this entire map always be just kind of lit up from a player's perspective? If it's a map like this, then they can see the whole thing. If they're going into a cave, then they're not going to have global illumination because they're not going to see everything. Actually, that's not really explaining it correctly. Ugh. Now that I think about it, I get this mixed up in my head still to this day. If I do know, if you have global illumination on, but you turn off Token Vision and Fog Explorer, then when you drag someone's token in here, they'll see the whole map. If you turn on Token Vision, then they're only going to see what the character sees based on their type of vision. So if you drop a human into this map, it would be dark. It'd be black because they don't have dark vision or anything like that. If you drop an elf, then they'll see all gray and they'll see out to however many grids their dark vision is set up for. As they move, it'll move with them, and where they came from will go black again, unless you check fog exploration. What that does is, once I move, it at least shows me where I've already been on the map. I can't see what's in that location anymore, but I can tell that that's where I've been there. Shit, now I'm gonna have to. So the scene contains a global source of light that provides all areas. Okay, so this is global light basically. So actually with this off is what would be true with what I said. If I drop someone in, well, first of all, if I do this, then no one's going to see anything. If I turn on Token Vision, then they'll see based on what their character has for vision. If it's human, they see nothing. If they have dark vision, they see dark vision. But then if I do global illumination, then it's still would be all color. But you can mess with whether or not it's darkness color or light color. It gets confusing. And for ambiance, if you create a playlist under the sound, under the playlist area, that's how you can assign a playlist to this scene so that every time this scene loads, it'll automatically start playing this playlist. You can also set default weather effects. If you always want it to be rainy, then you could click on rain and it'll have that overlay of a rain effect on top.
Is there a way to test to see like what the player sees as opposed to you as the GM?
Yes and no. So you can, but it's partially accurate. It's never going to be fully accurate. And this is something I've gone round and round with Foundry people, support people. So I drug Fred in here. So the image is horrible, but already you can see that his spot isn't matching the maps. It's because it matches, well, you can't see it, but it's matching the grid from out this grid.
Okay, yeah.
If I click on him, I can at least see that he can't see anything that's outside the map, which makes sense. But if I go to lighting, okay, well, that's not what I expected to see. No, because this is not what this is not what the person would see. So usually I have a good idea of what you guys can see, but it's never exactly accurate. I usually open up another browser and join the game on my computer, but from a browser, and connect as a user that I would test with. And that's the only way that you can know for certain what they see and what they hear. Let's see. I need to bring in a map that actually functions. Let me see if I can find one real quick. I think this is one. Oh, that one's working. Because they have no sight. And the grid's wrong. So that's not what I wanted.
Obviously a forest, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't put a wall or anything in the forest, right? Is there a way that you would like kind of block the characters off from like going a particular way, or like, you know?
Yeah, because there's different kinds of walls. There's walls that are meant to be like, you can't go past here, which would be like a wall inside of a building or the walls of a cave. But there's also, let's see. So that's basic walls. A basic wall is what you think of when you think of as of a wall. So you can't walk through it, light does not pass through it, etc. There's also a terrain wall that is changing. It kind of lets light pass through it. I don't know all the property differences, but I use these all the time. There's invisible walls, which light passes through it. It looks like you could walk through it, but it blocks your movement. You have ethereal walls, which I think is what I would do in this scenario based on your question. So if I, you see this scene, I don't want the scene to be obscured and make it look weird with weird shadows. But if I put an ethereal wall around just inside the border of all of the woods, that would prevent the character from walking through there, but it wouldn't make the scene look weird with the weird shadows and light coming weird, but it would keep them from going in the woods if that's what I wanted. So you just need to understand these 4 different types of walls and what they're used for.
Yeah. Like, are you thinking like they can't see through the trees, or they can't move through the tree area, or you just want to make sure that like there's like can you make circles for like where the trunks of all the trees would be? Like,
Yeah, yeah, that would be a terrain thing, because you wouldn't want them to actually walk through the tree. So I would do something like this. And that is a terrain wall. So let me see if I can get the light to do what I expect it to do. So now you can see that the light kind of goes around this tree, but I
I like that. That's cool.
I can't walk through it because you can't
Yeah,
go
that's pretty cool.
you can't go through a tree trunk. So that's what a terrain wall does. The ethereal wall, I'm pretty sure, would be for the case where I don't want the light to change. I just, for whatever reason, I don't want them to come into these woods. Well, it still put the little darkness, but you can see through it. Oh, look at that. That didn't do shit. That's the opposite. That one only messes with light, not prevents you from moving through it. So maybe it would be the terrain. Oh, invisible wall. There you go. Yeah.
Shift or control, like
I'm
how are you using?
holding control key down the whole time, the entire time. And then when I left click is what's making those dots.
Okay, got it. I couldn't figure out how to like make my walls connect, so I just had like a whole bunch of walls, and I just used that tool to the top left of the person to like
Yeah.
connect my walls at the very top.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That you definitely have to get used to using the control key because that makes creating the walls a million times quicker and easier for sure.
can I ask a quick question about the assets folder?
Yeah.
Within that folder, can you also separate between like village scenes, city scenes?
Yeah. Once you're in that folder, you can do whatever you like. I personally am more comfortable doing that just within Windows Explorer, not within Foundry. So I could come into this, which I kind of did a little bit, but I would create folders here, and then this whole structure would be what you see when you're in Foundry.
Gotcha. But you could also pull. You're saying that you can pull scenes or pull images and things like that from modules. You don't have to go into the assets folder.
Yeah, so if the module has scenes built into it, then when I'm searching for basics, when I'm searching for the image, I can go up to the top, and the top always includes the modules folder. So when I click there, these are all of my modules. So I think Adventures of Faerun has maps. They will also have an assets folder. Click on that. They labeled a folder called scenes, very helpful. And these are pretty consistent, these naming conventions I've seen across modules. And then within scenes, they have them very organized into additional folders. Baldur's Gate. Now these are actual map images. So this one is not a play map. This is apparently the map of Baldur's Gate. Let me do a different one. Abandoned Tower. And so I'm able to pull that one directly out of the modules folder. I don't have to import or copy anything. Or a module would, adding a module, hopefully would create compendium entries. And if those compendium entries have a scenes, which none of these two don't, but a lot of them have scenes, and you can right click import, and that would put it here, and they are already set up. Most of them already have all the walls done. They have the lighting done. The grids are done. It's just ready to go. The only thing you would add is music and maybe weather. This one should be that way, but it doesn't look like it is. I don't think that grid is what they're expecting, but anyway. But yes, you can definitely pull, you can use images from inside modules. Yes, for sure. Okay, let me go find a better map. I know I've got a bunch that are already kind of done. I'm just drawing a blank. Whoa, why is that grayscale? Oh, I know why. Hang on, sorry. I already messed with the settings of this scene. If I start from scratch, it'll probably work. There we go. So this one I actually got from a module. It's a group called Forgotten Adventures, and they have free stuff, but they have a Patreon with a lot of stuff. But this one, just adding it, and it was already set up. So the grids are appropriate for the map. The lighting's not, but. So that grid aligns to where I would expect it to be for this. So it's good to go now. And then I can drag in, holy shit, that dude is huge. I can drag this guy in, and then the way to create encounters is you just mark anybody, all the actors that should be involved, and then right click on any of them. And then there's a combat toggle that when you click that, it added them automatically to this, to the combat encounter. And then they roll, which, again, there are no modules on this guy. So there's no dice. This is all basics. No carousel, no sound. Well, there was a kind of a dice sound. And once everybody's rolled their dice, then you begin the encounter. And then combat really works the same for the Dungeon Master as it does for you guys. So I target just like you do. I open up their character sheet. The character sheets are just less complex than player characters. There's less going on. Wow, this dude actually missed. But the rest of it is the same thing you see. The cards in chat look different than what you see in my games. And again, it's because I have a lot of modules that override almost all of this. But you can certainly run games this way. People do it all the time. This way meaning kind of staying free. Foundry, when I talk to them, when I get on their Discord and ask them questions, the first thing they get pissy about is how many modules do you have? Because the more modules you have, the less they're able to support you, because modules can change all sorts of things. And so if I ask them for help, they'll say, well, I can't help you. It's a module. So you got to go talk to the module creator. Which is fine. It's just something to know.
How do you have the PC sideways?
Because that's the default.
Just this map or for?
No, this is the default setting. So right now, when I go to configure settings, there's only two things over here. One is core, which means Foundry wide. Doesn't matter. It's agnostic to what system. In those settings, if I scroll down, automatic token rotation. So that is what's doing that. They're expecting you to have tokens like this, where when I move, it makes sense for him to change direction. But ours are more portrait looking, so it looks weird when they start flipping. But Foundry is going to these other styles of token, and that's why they are defaulting to that. So now when I move this guy, he doesn't do that rotation anymore. But anyway, there's only two different areas of settings now. So this is Foundry the core, and this is Dungeons & Dragons the game system. Every time you add a module, each module will have its own settings. So it gets more and more complex, and modules can override settings that you might have done up here. And it takes a long time to learn what all of these fucking things do. I don't know what they all do. Multiple people have told me that when you start learning Foundry, do it without modules. And only when you start getting comfortable with that, then start adding modules that do something that specifically you want to do. For example, if I tell someone to roll a d20, notice there's no dice in my chat area. So everyone would have to know that it's /roll d20, hit enter. But not everybody is, used to typing stuff like that. So the first module I would want to add is dice tray. It's free. I already have it installed in the system area. So if I come to manage modules in my world, so these are all of the modules that I've added to my Foundry, but they don't get used in this world until I enable them. So if I add dice tray, then it refreshes everything. Now you see I've got the dice below the chat window. So now they can just type that, hit enter. Well, the next thing I want to see real dice flying, or not real dice, but I want to see virtual dice flying. Well, that's no problem. Everybody in the Foundry world knows that is a module, dice so nice. That's what everybody uses. it's also free. I select that. Yes, yes. Now when I do my D20, there's a dice. These are the easiest types of modules because really there's no configuration. The only configuration is dice so nice if you want to change what dice the style is. That's it. I didn't have to change any. There are settings. There's settings for everything. So if I go into the game settings now, so you see there's 2 more settings areas: dice so nice and dice tray. They all got settings. And to add those modules, I have to return to setup. So that's going to leave this world, bring me back here, and add on modules. And how did you add an image, meaning an NPC? Yep, I will show you that. So if you click install module, then this is contacting Foundry, some service in Foundry that developers have registered their module with. So there's 4,105 modules, but that's just the ones that are available inside of Foundry's inventory is the best word for it. You can find other modules that aren't in here that you can add, and they give you a URL that you paste in right here, and it will install them. The most common ones are always in here. So dice so nice. I just start typing it. Here it is. It's already installed. Otherwise, I would see this install button. You just click on that, and that's it. Once it's sitting in here, that means it's installed within your Foundry system, but it isn't used in a world until you enable it. And then do your settings. So if I create Charlie World, get that one all set up the way I want, and then I have a new campaign starting, completely different campaign. I want to create a new world, call it Delta World. I have to do all of this all over again. I have to add all the modules, go through each setting that I want and duplicate that, and document it, remember it all. It's a pain in the ass. But there's a module that copies settings from one world to another. And I use that, which is why I do things locally, because that module doesn't work in hosted Foundry. So there's that.
Is there a cheat sheet of the modules that you have downloaded?
Yeah, and actually when you're playing a Foundry game, even as a player, you can go to game settings, and I think it says view modules, but you have this button and it would show you all of them that I have active in that world. Just FYI. And when you're looking at them, most of them have this information icon in front. Not all of them, but most of them. And if you click on the link that is popping up, it usually takes you to that module's site, and you can see what it does, understand what's going on. Sometimes they tell you how to use it. I do that all the time when I play other people's games. But yeah, I can definitely create you a cheat sheet of, yeah, I'll do a cheat sheet of the ones that I know most people would want most of the time. You know, for example, if I were to attack, I remember what this was. It's a wizard. If I were to attack this creature with a spell, let's say Firebolt, notice there are no animations. There's no Firebolt streaking across. That's because that only comes from modules. Foundry does not provide those. So, but for the most part, everybody, at least for Dungeons and Dragons games, we all use the same modules for that. So I can definitely list all those out for you. In fact, I have a list somewhere, probably not up to date, but let's see. A couple other basic things, and then I'm going to talk about paid stuff. So I already talked about, like, there's a complexity for telling people how to access your game. I know that my router's IP address on the internet side is this address right here. It's because I went to a website that tells you what your internet's IP address is by visiting it. And then I had to go into my internet router and say, I want you to allow this 30000 port. So if somebody's on the internet, they come to my router's IP address trying to hit this 30,000 port, I want you to allow that in and come to my computer using that same port. It's called port forwarding. People do the same thing hosting all sorts of games locally. If they want to do a Minecraft server, whatever, it's same situation, but you have to understand how to do that. And your internet router is different than mine, so I can't really tell you how to do it. I can tinker with it and figure it out. But this is the exact URL that I give all of you to access my game. This exact thing right here. And the good news is Foundry, this green checkbox is dynamic. If I don't have my router set up, and it's doing some kind of check from Foundry's network, trying to access my game, and only if it's able to do that does it give me this green check. So if I see this green check, it means any of you should also be able to access it, which is a very cool thing. Usually you just have to, it's just trial and error. Once you know that they can connect, then you have to go to user management to actually give them user accounts. So every time you guys log into mine, you see usernames, and I make them to match your Discord names just so it's easier. And no one ever has a password. I could give you a password, but that would be hell to deal with. And then you've got these basic options for what the role is. All of you are players. The reason why you've got these different roles is because there are permissions that you can assign within Foundry, which you can look at those under configure permissions. So the only difference between a player and a trusted player is that by default, the Foundry settings are giving trusted players a few more permissions that they can do. So way back when I was talking about journal entries, and I said that you can even give your players permissions to create their own journal entries, you would have to click on this box. This is what, this is what's in all of my worlds, that players have the create journal entry option. So they can create journals, but only they can see them. They can't see mine, but they can create their own and take notes if they want to. They can create their own map notes if I want them to. Usually the default is fine though. So you create the users, they're a player. So now when they come to the server, they see the login page, they drop down, red dot is an option, you go in. So those two things are what you have to do to get people access. They have to have physical network access, and then you have to set them up as a user. You can't share users, because once someone logs in with one of these user accounts, they're grayed out and nobody else can log in with that username anymore. I could have just created generic player 1, player 2, player 3, but these users link to a player character as well, which strangely enough, normally doesn't even matter, but there are certain modules that require that linkage to be in place for them to function properly. So better to just know that and give everyone their own individual username so that you can easily make sure that you're assigning their character. When I come to actors, so I created Red Dottie, I think I did. So if Fred was her character, I right click, configure ownership. Yeah, so Red Dottie is now an option because I created a user for her and I give her owner. So now when she comes into the game, I know that she has full control of that token with player permissions because Red Dottie has the player role. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. What was your other question, Bree? I know I saw one. Where was it? Oh, did you add an image, meaning an NPC image? Okay, so this is another one of the modules that you really, really need. Out of the box, you can only upload a file. So like anything else, I could upload a file from anywhere on my computer, and then it would replace this portrait file.
So you would have to create
No, maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking me then.
No, I just want to show a picture of something. They're not a character that's actually like you're talking to an old grandma who looks like this. You know?
Then yes. So you would, so assuming that you're creating the character yourself, that it's not coming from a module, then yes, I would.
It is.
If it's coming from a module, if they already have a player character or a non-player character defined, then it would already have all this set.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, not a module as in like a module from Foundry, but like from D&D, like like the book. Like it's just like a character, like a.
Yeah, if you're creating the character in Foundry, by hand, then you have to find an image for it and upload it. Having said that, there are also modules which in some cases, the only thing that module does is give you access to a buttload of token images that you could use for this very purpose. Most of those you have to pay for. So they give you like 10,000 token images in this module.
So, yeah, I don't need a token. I don't need an image. Like I don't need a sheet for it or anything. Like, I just want to show a picture, Like if
Oh. Then that would be a journal entry. Yeah. You would create a journal entry and say, let me, I want to bring stuff in. I'm like handcuffed because I'm on a bear system. It's painful. So this is just like a wiki that is what is all these journal entries are. But inside of these, you can have text, which can have images, or you can create an entry, a page that's just an image, and it's looking for what's the source. So I'll say, this is my assets folder. So these are things that I brought into my Foundry. I'll just say, I want to show them this glass vial image. So I do that, save it. So now, yeah. And now I can double or click on this and do show players. And now it'll show that image to them as well. It'll give them like temporary visibility. Now I have modules. I can't even tell you which one that when I click this, it has an option that says display in chat. So for everybody, it just shows up as a card, but that's a module. Foundry doesn't do that out of the box. Theirs is a lot more convoluted because you can see as I clicked on that, you're like, okay, what the fuck is this telling me? But yeah, journal entries, because they can be an image, a map location. You can import a PDF into this. Rule is just text. Spell list is really just text. You can bring a video in and play a video and share that with them. Once they're a journal entry, though, you can also give them access, directly here, where I can say all players are an observer, which means the next time they log into this world, they'll see this foo entry underneath journal, and they can click on it and they'll see this image because you just gave them read rights to the whole thing. Where it gets a little bit more complicated is you can have folders, and then you can have documents within documents within documents. Getting them access when it's that deep is complicated because you have to give them access above that. And then you're worried, well, did I give them access to other stuff within that nest I didn't want them to see? Whereas if I could just say, show this in the chat, I don't have to worry about any of that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to show, how are you guys on time? I know, Bree, you're still driving. Well, at least I think. Yeah. Actually, you're almost home, aren't you?
I mean, we haven't, yeah. We apparently have another 45 minutes of driving, so.
Okay. How are you, Dottie? Okay, cool. So obviously I've already mentioned that I come back out to setup and go to the add-on modules, and I can click on, oops, I didn't go to modules. Go to modules. Go to install. Wait for it to load its list. Good. It gave me an example right off the bat. This is what I was hoping. So this one, so I didn't search for anything. These are just the first two that popped up. I have no idea what that order is, but this one, there's an install button that's clickable. That means right off the bat, I know it's a free module. This next one says not owned. It's locked and there's nothing for me to click. That means it's a paid module, and you've got to go to the creator. Usually it's Patreon, and there's a way for you to link your Foundry system to your Patreon account. So automatically, once you become a Patreon to somebody that develops modules, usually it takes a few minutes, but when you refresh, this not owned would turn to install. Now, if you are going to run Dungeons and Dragons 5e games, Foundry themselves have content, paid content modules for Dungeons and Dragons. So they have the official player's handbook, the official Dungeon Master's Guide, the official Monsters Manual, Tasha's Cauldron, the new ones, Heroes of Faerun, Adventures of Faerun, Ebron's Artificer, whatever it's called. But they don't have a ton, but they have like 7. To get to that, you have to go to their marketplace. So the marketplace is, it's where a lot of paid content is found. I don't know if it's all, but it's certainly a lot. If you go there, I hate this website. It's so freaking hard to find stuff. Let me see if I can figure it out. So I want Dungeons and Dragons adventure content, but I want Wizards content. Here we go. Wizards of the Coast. So these are what I was just referring to. So these are licensed modules that Foundry's providing. So Foundry has gone to Wizards of the Coast, taken their physical, digital, whatever, and made their own digital version of it designed for Foundry. So it's formatted for Foundry. So if you want to get all of the options for creating characters, then you need the player's handbook. If you want some extended stuff, if you want the latest and greatest artificer class stuff, then you're going to need to buy the Ebrin, or you could do Tasha's and have the what's now the old artificer stuff. Heroes of Faerun, Adventures of Faerun, they added, I forget which is which. I think Heroes is a source book, Adventures is campaign content. So Heroes, that book has taken a lot of the 2014 species that a lot of people used to like to play and have brought them into the 2024 world. Like Shadar Kai or the Warforged or not Tiefling, what are the cats? The tax Tabaxi. Yeah, thank you. So those are all in the Heroes of Faerun. If you want the licensed content, very well put together, you're going to be stuck buying these. I own all of these except for Tomb of Annihilation because I've never run Tomb of Annihilation. But Red Dottie, I think you did a couple of one shots where I was using Heroes of the Borderlands. That I had that because I bought this. So once you buy these, if you buy these, when I go back into Foundry, actually not true, almost true. So when I buy these, let me get logged in. Okay, I am logged in. Somehow this marketplace login, which is separate, but it's linked to my Foundry VTT account. So when I go back to the Foundry VTT site, which is different, click on my profile, purchased content. So this is my, I guess, my license keys for all those things that I purchased. Player's guide. So player's handbook, I have to click on this link and then it takes me to the official page for this module and scroll down to the bottom. Here are the module install URLs. So they're called manifest URLs. I basically copy this link address, then go to my Foundry and I paste that down here because you will not find any of that content in here in this big inventory.
Wow, so convoluted.
Yes. And it's taken me a long time to get used to it. So I did this then for all of those digital books that I bought. And by the way, I had already bought all those digital books on D&D Beyond. And then I was using Roll20. So I bought digital content on Roll20. And then I was trying another VTT and I bought freaking digital content there. None of them worked together. So I bought the physical and 4 different versions of the virtual of several books. I've spent a lot of money figuring these things out. But
I was going to ask you, if you bought it on Foundry, does it tie to your D&D Beyond?
no, nope, it does not.
You have to find different versions for each.
If you want the digital version to be in D&D Beyond for managing your characters there, yes. That's why for me, for our server, I create a D&D Beyond campaign because I already bought all that digital stuff. And so I might as well use it by letting everyone manage their characters in it. But it is not directly helping me in Foundry whatsoever.
Use the PPT service through D&D Beyond?
Yep.
So how does it compare to like Roll20 and then Foundry? Like, are they similar or?
Well, you can't extend that one. So it would be like what I'm showing you for that Foundry world that I just created. But I can't add to it. So there's no animations. There's no I can't control sound. There's just a lot of things that it doesn't give me. It's a very pretty VTT. I think they're starting to support light now. You have to do fog of war manually by hand. I mean, they have dice.
You know, Apple and Android. Android, you can do a lot more stuff together. That's with it.
Yes, but I wouldn't quite say that D&D Beyond is the Apple, but in the sense that they're wanting to be the Apple. So is Roll20. Roll20 right now is considered to be the most popular VTT. They're ahead of D&D Beyond as far as features.
Better.
Oh yeah, but because of everything, I mean, the fact that I'm having to walk you guys through all of this to save you the time and pain is the whole reason why Roll20 is popular, because it's easy to pick up. Which is because they don't have all of these features though. So if you want things to, I mean, I am not a D&D guru. I have not been playing this game for decades. I'm not a lore expert. I enjoy playing the game. I enjoy the mechanics of it. I enjoy how Foundry is more immersive. I want to see the animations. I want to hear the music. I want to see explosions. Because I play video games. I want it to look like Baldur's Gate, or you can't get that with the other virtual tabletops. None of them are like Foundry in that sense. So anyway, once I installed the modules for the licensed content, then they show up here. So this is the, all these that start with Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon. Those are those books. So if I go back into my basic world, manage modules, here are some of them right here. So there's the player's handbook, the monster's manual, and dungeon master's guide. Eberron, Forge of Artificer, Forgotten Realms, Adventures in Heroes. I have a couple of campaign ones, which I'm actually going to show you that too, so you understand how that works. Here's Tasha's. So those are source books. So I tell I want to use it, refresh. Now I get all these updates, because then when you install or update a module, sometimes you get, here's what's changed. So it's all just kind of informative, blah, blah, blah. But what did that really give me? If I go to scenes, there's nothing new here. If I go to actors, there's nothing new here. There's no items. It's all in compendiums. So there's a lot of new compendiums here. So now, for example, if I go into this open compendium browser, it's going to be a lot different. I mean, it's going to look the same, but I mean, the options are different. So now on the side here for my sources, before I only had SRD 5.1 and 5.2. Now I have a lot more. So this is on classes. So if I specifically click on Player's Handbook, I have all the classes you expect to have. These can be drug into the character sheets, and you are running the cleanest, purest version of these classes that exist in Foundry anywhere, period. If you want an artificer, then you could go to the Ebrin, and this is the latest and greatest artificer. Tasha's also has artificer, but it's the slightly, it's recently become the old one. If I go to species, same thing. Now that I've got these other books, I have a lot more species options. And I can enable whichever ones I want. It's only showing sources that are applicable to the context. So of all those books that I own, only 2 of them have definitions of species. That's why there's only 2 of them showing up here. Items. So this has been creating a significant item library behind the scenes as I do this as well. They're not here. They're here in the compendium, which all could be drugged directly into character sheets as well. The players can't do this though. Well, I don't think they can by default. I've changed things so many times. I honestly, I don't remember, but I do know that if you import these so that they show up in items, then your players can drag things from that items area into their character sheet. I know a lot of game masters, that's the only way they let players add stuff. I think I enable it in mine, but I don't remember. But anyway, so you're kind of getting the picture that adding those compendiums have added to the adding those modules have added to the compendium content, which I can then use throughout. It just so happens that where's Dungeon Master's Guide? So if I open up Dungeon Master's Guide, the first entry is the digital version of the complete book. This is the Dungeon Master's Guide, fully digital. And I can click on it. I can't search it, which sucks. But if I know where I'm going, I can click on it and it'll open that section. I can close it, go back to another section, what have you. Same for all of these. The first entry is the entire book, which you've probably seen me go through these. I know Red Dottie has anyway. Back to Dungeon Master's Guide. So it has the book, but it also has a separate thing with lists of all the equipment that it provides, a list of all the features, a list of bastions, roll tables, actors. This one has scenes. So these scenes, which are horrible, by the way, because they're black and white and look like they were made about the time I was born. If you right click and import those, they're ready to go. They're ugly, but they're ready to go. All of the grids are done. The walls are done. At least they should be. I think I found a couple that weren't, but Adventures of Faerun. It has actually complete adventures in it. I don't really understand how they organize that. To be honest, it looks like it's just a bunch of, oh, I get it. So they are individual. These are like one shots then. So these act a little differently. Instead of this being just an item or just a map, it's actually a grouping of them. So if I want to play this Fury Grove, whatever this is, again, seems like it's a one shot. I have this one button to do an import, but it's telling me that it is going to create 11 actors, a journal entry, 1 scene, and 8 folders. So I would have all the content I need to run this one shot without having to do any work at all. I just have to get familiar with the story so that I can then run it for you. And that is a small version of the bigger campaign modules. So what I mean by that is Heroes of the Borderlands. So I showed you guys, this is one of the Wizard licensed Foundry contents that I bought, the digital version of Heroes. So if I add this guy, it immediately is going to pop up with, you've just added this entire campaign. So if you import this guy, the intention is this world that I created, this world is going to be dedicated to run Heroes of the Borderlands. Because once I import this, it's going to create all 82 non-player characters that exist, 31 journal entries, which are, you know, the book. When you look at the Heroes of the Borderlands content, it's got 28 scenes and it divides it among 29 folders. Creates an initial scene, which is when players, it's the default scene, like the waiting scene that that you would want players to get to the first time they join your session. But this guy sets up everything. And with these, it's very likely that not only are the scenes set up correctly for the grid and lighting, the walls are absolutely already done. There's also a chance that it will have music built into it. It will have sounds already assigned, ambient sounds, sometimes even ambient weather. I mean, the whole thing, which is the whole benefit of buying paid for content, because all of that stuff is done for you. So for me, this cost $20. I mean, that's a couple of days of coffee budget for me, that I love coffee. But the amount of time this saved me from creating I can create all the same content, but we're talking days, not just minutes, not hours, but days, you know, but when I can buy it, import it, and everything's already set up and ready to go for me. So that's kind of the flavors of modules. Some of them do something very specific, and there's nothing but settings like the dice. Some of them provide some compendium content. Some of them provide complete adventures and everything you need to run that adventure. And depending on what the module does, they start adding options to your left panel as well. For example, where's the safety one? Safety. Table safety. So I'm trying to get listed on what's it called? Start playing. I don't know if you ever use that to find a game. But one of the things that they require is that you have a safety technology for the players. So once I added that safety technology thing, it added, actually, I don't even see it. Players see it. Players have the ability to put up a stop sign because whatever the content that's happening right at that moment is something that they're offended by it, or they're scared by it, or whatever. And so that gives them the ability to communicate that they're uncomfortable. I get told that, and then I can acknowledge it and know it and move on to something else. That didn't change the options on the left, though. I thought it did. So you guys can see I've got a lot of, here's a simple one. I think that does it. Break time. Break time is a very simple module. So on the left, it gave me this coffee cup. So if you need to go to the bathroom or something, you click on the coffee cup and it lets me know that you're stepping away. It also gives me this break time option down here in the user configuration in the bottom left. So if I click that, it sets a break time. It has all the players in it. So if I'm running a campaign, our sessions get pretty long. So in the middle of it, I try to give everybody a break. And when they get back, because sometimes our mics are still muted, you just click on I'm back, and I see once everybody's green, I know everybody's back, and we can continue playing. I mean, doesn't really add a lot to the game. It's just helpful. And that's all it does. And if I don't want it in that world, I can take it away. But it doesn't affect any other world where I've got that same module set up. And there's just one other thing that I had on my list. Let me get rid of heroes first so I quit seeing that dialogue pop up. All right, so I don't have any items. Let me get one imported. Let's do a weapon. Let's do a club. So imported club. So now I've got club in my items area. And like I've mentioned before already, you can drag this into a character sheet, and now they have a club available. But when you look at this as a dungeon master, I don't even know what this looks like as a player. I know it's got some of this, but I don't think it has all of this. So you've got description, which tells you, because this is a weapon, it tells you what the modifier is for hitting, what the damage is, but it's just descriptions. You get to details and you start seeing some selectable properties. Seems pretty easy to understand. If you want to change the weapon mastery for a club to not be slow, you can change it to cleave or whatever. But they're just like clickable. Distance to hit is 5 feet. I want to make it 10 feet. Base damage is 1d4. You could change that. So really, by putting this item here, it's almost like I've created a homebrew version of a club already, even if I don't change anything. But now I can go and change things, and it's absolutely, it's become a homebrew club. But the big thing is, the complicated thing is this activity stuff. So this is where the complexity of what happens in Foundry behind the scenes every time you do an attack with this weapon. So it's got some identification stuff, activation stuff. So spells would look really different here. Consumption, is it something that you have a limited use? You can only use 2 every long rest. Does it require targeting? Is it a ranged weapon? Then effects. What's the attack ability? It's strength. I could force that to be wisdom if I wanted to. This is where things start getting really complicated, because, you know, I DM multiple games a week. And so there's a lot of different characters at a lot of different levels with a lot of different features and spells. Some of which don't come from Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. So it comes from other places, and they don't always act the way the players expect them to act. And so you kind of have to understand how to troubleshoot those things. So it's the same thing. If I edit a spell, it kind of puts me in that same view. So you can see the properties here get a little more complicated. I'm looking for one that has an actual macro, but oh, here you go, sort of. So this one has this is considered a macro. 8 plus at mod plus at prof. That means the value of the DC for the saving throw is 8 plus the spell modifier for the casting character plus the proficiency bonus of the casting character. There are cases where these things don't work, especially like you'll have a scenario where an item or a spell works a certain way most of the time, but then the character has a feat that when they activate this feat, it changes these, like Shillelagh, whatever that's called. When you use Shillelagh, it changes the way a club or a quarterstaff functions. And if they don't do the calculations right, then it becomes a pain in the ass, because if it's not doing it automatically, then it's hard to deal with how to do it manually at that point. And those kinds of things, I can only make you aware of it. That's a case where you just kind of have to play through those things many times before you start learning, how do you resolve when Foundry's not doing what you expect? How do you deal with that? And that probably, the only way that could be taught is if you were able to watch games played from the dungeon master's view, to see like all the things that I do behind the scenes that, like, oh, I forgot to target it. Okay, no, I'll fix it for you real quick. That alone is like a very tricky thing, or at least it used to be. It's second nature now, but when that was first happening, I was like, fuck, okay, we'll just do it all over again, retarget. Or I cast it on myself instead of this other one. All those little things, those are very frustrating when you first start playing.
Yeah. So how does it work? Like, say you've got a campaign like Icewind Dale or something, but you've got, as you have set up on your Discord, you have a group that might be playing on one day and a different group playing on another day. Do you have to create basically two different worlds of Icewind Dale, or within the Icewind Dale world, can you have, I don't know, two different campaigns going?
I would say that that's a matter of preference, but if you're going to run multiple in one, you just have to be aware of a couple things, which I can show you. So, like, I was doing Phandelver and Below with you guys on Sundays until last week, but I've had a long going campaign now of Phandelver and Below that I run on Mondays. So you can see right here, I have a world called Phandelver Mondays. I had another one that was Phandelver Sundays. So I chose not to combine them. But I could have, but it would require me to always remember. It's mostly the scenes that become a problem, because if let me shut up until it loads, otherwise I start just babbling.
Well, that's what I was imagining. Like, if I know, like, generally when you go into a campaign the next week or whatever that you've already been playing, your characters are generally already set up where they were before.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just wondering how that would work.
Yeah, and if they're kind of in the same time frame as another campaign doing the same campaign, then that's a problem. So the way I would get around doing that, but I don't, but the way I would is, so I'm in the scenes. Nope, that's a journal. If I go to scenes, so this Phandelver and Below is also licensed content that I bought from Foundry. So it built the entire campaign for me, the content. I've added stuff to it, but it gave me everything that I absolutely needed. And its scenes are broken out by the chapters of the book. So, for example, the first scene you always do in that is the Goblin Ambush. And so this is still sitting here with the 4 characters that originally did this. There's goblins in here that are dead, but this was done 4 months ago. So if I've got 2 groups doing the same one, I would never play the original scene. I would duplicate it and then maybe label that scene as group 1 or group 2. So that's really the only place. Yeah, that's the only place that things override, at least for what I do. I could see where there'd be other things, but it's mostly the scenes that are getting shared. And after a big combat, I mean, shit's everywhere. And to reset it to where it was, I don't even know if I could. So that's personally why I was doing separate worlds, because I wouldn't have to remember to do that, because I tend not to, because when I'm in a game, there's so much shit going on. I don't remember that kind of stuff a lot. But there's nothing that says you can't run multiple games in the same world. I mean, you could have multiple campaign content, because under scenes, you'd have Fandelver and Below, you'd have Icewind Dale. So you certainly could run all of those in the same. You also have to consider too, though, that by doing that, when users log in, they have to log in as somebody and they're going to see a long list. What if they accidentally chose the wrong user and played the whole session with the wrong user? I mean, I don't think that would happen, but it's just more things that could complicate the situation. Makes it easier for you because you only have to do the settings one time, whereas I'm having to manage settings across multiple worlds. But like I said, I found a module that kind of does it for me. So it's not a big deal anymore.
Like how a combat encounter works behind the scenes then. Like how do you fix if somebody is targeted the wrong person, or
yeah, I can't really, it would be hard for me to demonstrate that when it's not actual people playing on the other side, because even I can run an entire combat encounter myself, but if someone else isn't doing it from their computer, it's really not the same thing. So it'd be good.
And how do you, like, that's the other question. How do you import the D&D Beyond to
a module? A very complicated module.
DDB importer or something like that.
Yes.
You can find it.
DDB importer.
Yeah.
Which it's used a lot. I mean, a lot of people use it. It is a pain in the butt. And the more I understand it, the more I understand why people at Foundry hate that it gets used at all. You've been in games, Red Dotty, with me, I think, where someone cast a spell and it didn't really do what we expected. And I say, well, let me try another version of it. Have you been there when I was doing stuff like that, saying stuff like that?
Oh, possibly.
And that's because DDB importer, it adds more stuff to the compendium. It adds, in fact, this D&D Beyond, this is things that module imports into. Its source is D&D Beyond, though. So I have to also make a connection to D&D Beyond, which has several steps that you have to do. But once it's there, then like I can import characters, I can import other stuff, but mainly characters. But when it brings those in, that module, so you bring in a character, that character has class, species, background, all of those items, all of those feats, all of those spells. It doesn't know which version of those things I have in my Foundry. It doesn't know that I've got the player's handbook compendium installed. It doesn't know that I have Dungeon Masters. It doesn't know that I have Monsters Manual. It does not know these things. It does its best to guess, like for this spell, I'm going to use this version of it when I link it to Foundry. And that's why I have so many issues with when I bring a character, when I import someone's character into Foundry, I have to spend not for a one shot, I don't do this, but for a campaign, I have to spend a lot of time cleaning up the character, replacing items that don't work properly with what it should have used, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Because I see it all the time, and I can show you like these different compendiums, like they all have a club. I wouldn't say the club would be a problem because it's such a basic item, but if there's an item that's pretty not popular, pretty common, it's not unusual for me to find those items in like that item in 3 different compendiums. And when I go in to edit them, they're configured differently. They shouldn't be. There's no reason for them to be. And that's why I usually end up messing around with my environments and say, okay, well, that version of shattered mine or whatever it's called, firebolt. It's usually the higher level things that don't work as well. The lower level stuff is usually not a problem. Druids are a pain in the ass because they can transform themselves, wild shape and stuff. Oh my God, that is very difficult to get working properly. Or even mage hand is difficult for mage hand to pull the right image. It should do it every time, but it doesn't. But just the fact that you can have like 3 clubs from 3 sources, all have a different configuration, which under normal circumstances isn't a problem. It's when you do something like Shillelagh that changes the properties of the club, that's when it doesn't work. Or you cast some other spell on somebody that reduces their strength, but the weapon didn't reduce when the strength ability reduced. Something's not right about the configuration. It probably just felt like it was a lot more often when I was struggling with all of this early on. It doesn't happen nearly as often anymore, but I also have things that I do thanks to modules that kind of do the cleanup for me as well. So now every time I import a character from D&D Beyond, I have another module called Cauldron of Plentiful Resources. It is like this jack of all trades module that kind of does the cleanup. It looks at all the modules you have installed and knows the ones that are like the most common, the most popular, and automatically fixes the items and spells and stuff on a character so that it is using all the right ones or the ones that you think are correct. So if I open up this character, for example, this CPR medkit, CPR is Cauldron of Plentiful Resources. So when I have that module, it adds this guy here that I click on it, it examines the character. And so this is showing me there's 5 resources that are set up properly. There's 2 that aren't, Second Wind and Tactical Mind. And there's 1 that's completely out of date, Unarmed Strike. So more than likely, if this character was being played and they did Unarmed Strike, something is going to be messed up with it. Maybe it's mechanical and it does a calculation wrong, or maybe it's just an animation. I don't know. This doesn't tell me. But all I have to do is click update. It tells me it updates them, and I'm done. I mean, that module alone has probably saved my life. I didn't kill myself after having to deal with all these situations that I'm just like, I have no idea what's wrong, but it doesn't work to do it manually either. So I just felt like it was completely broken. And even though I hope that what I've covered now, you won't even realize how much time and pain I've saved you, but I still can't give you all of the experience that I have, like with all the modules and what they do for me that's good and what's not good, and how many of the modules I've gone through I'm pretty OCD about stuff like that. I'm constantly trying new stuff. Um, I can't even tell you now. Like if you look at all these things, I have all these enabled. I can't even remember what all of them do. I just know that at some point I found that it was very useful and helped me, but maybe I'm not even using it anymore. I don't even know. I have 111 modules. Foundry freaks out when I tell them that.
So it's best once I like get something set up, even just like a little test thing, to just test it out then without actually necessarily putting on it.
Yeah, and if you've got like 2 monitors, then be a player character in a browser on the other monitor. If not, if you got another computer or a laptop, then because you're not going to be able to truly discover problems unless you are logging in as a player character. I probably catch 90% of it without that, but it's that 10% that always kicks me in the ass because you're in the middle of a session and people are waiting on you and things are stuck, and that I get all anxious and stuff. Because I find myself all the time, I'll make a duplicate of my player's characters. I'll duplicate it and then duplicate a scene, bring them all in there, and I'll play through an entire combat trying to find things that are messed up.
That's a good idea.
And one of them is an artificer, and I mean, we've been doing this for 20 weeks, and I still don't understand what artificers do. It's so weird. And druids are weird.
You know how you think about the icons, like you can lock them so that they're always facing upright. How do you rotate them if you want to show that they're prone or dead without removing them?
I think you click on it and then hold down Control and use the mouse wheel. And
Okay.
I don't know how I learned that.
How did you get rid of your macros bar?
A module. There is a macro. If you go on to Foundry's Discord, they'll give you the code for a macro, so you could come to the macro area, create one, and put in the one line of code that they give you. And what it did was toggle it in and out of view, but there's no way to do it out of the box. So whatever module I'm using puts it into collapsed. This collapse isn't even available out of the box. A module is giving me this collapse. These are all great examples of things you don't know until you until you want to focus on it and then try to figure out how to do it. The Foundry Discord is really good. They're jerks, but they know what they're talking about. I bite my tongue a lot.
So if you can get to join it.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna start running games, I don't think you could do it and not have that. Because I would always write down all the things that didn't work. Spend some time trying to see if I could figure out after a session, and if not, get onto the Foundry Discord. And there's an area. Of course, there's a lot of channels, but there's one that's like for core Foundry, and then there's one for the D&D gaming system, and then there's one that just generically says modules. So of course, in the beginning, I didn't know what was what, because I immediately was using modules. So I didn't know what was core,
what came from the game system, what came from module. I didn't know. I just saw something and like, okay, I have no idea how to resolve this because I didn't start from scratch, which was not a good idea. I just didn't think it was going to be this complicated when I started. But anyway, so like that's kind of when they can be a little bit jerky when like you post something on the D&D channel and like, that's not a game system. That's a module. Go to modules. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, there is a module that you'll hear about. I have it, and pretty much everybody has it. But it's illegal. Not illegal by the law, illegal from Foundry's perspective. They changed the name, but it's plutonium. Have you ever heard of plutonium? Foundry plutonium, not plutonium. It is a, so have you heard of the website 5e Tools?
I think so.
So it's a good little website that lets you quickly look up. It's like a database of everything D&D at your fingertips. And from all source books, all of them. That's what makes it illegal, because you don't have to buy anything to have access to all this information. I don't know how this company is getting around it to even run this website. I have no idea. But this group created a Foundry module called Plutonium. Plutonium basically pulls data from here. And so without buying anything, all the stuff I told you about buying the player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, so that you get that content, you can bypass all of that by using that Plutonium plugin. You get to it by going to, once you have the plugin installed, you go to items, and then there's an import here. So this is Plutonium. And it's a very loud tool because it has so much stuff. But like if I wanted my characters to be able to create any class they wanted, I would click on classes and subclasses. I can do a little bit of filtering here, but I just go to open importer. Oh, oops. Since when? Oh, it updated and something broke, and I don't want to go through trying to figure out how to tell you, but by default, it has access to every source book that exists. And so you would go to the import, and all of that content, it would then import as either compendiums or directly into these other areas. And you've got it. Everything, maps, everything from all books. So I made the mistake of going on to the Foundry Discord, and I said, hey, I imported blah, blah, blah from a module, but it's not doing what I want. And they said, okay, well, what module are you talking about? And I said, well, it's a popular one. I literally did not know. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that it was even popular. I didn't know that it was bad. I just assumed there's a billion modules, so how could they possibly know what I'm talking about? And so I stayed generic. I said, I don't know. It's just one that I heard about, that someone told me about. And they said, is it Plutonium? I said, yeah, it's that one. And I got almost got banned from the site. And I said, I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I use it still, but because I bought everything multiple times, I feel totally, good about using it because I have bought this digital content at some point somewhere. So I own it as far as I'm concerned. But this is completely different than the DDB importer tool because it pulls from D&D Beyond, and So that is somewhat taking advantage of the digital content that you own in D&D Beyond. But you can only pull in characters and things related to characters. You can't pull in other stuff. Like you can't pull in I bought Vandelver Below, the digital version of it in D&D Beyond. I can't pull that full campaign and all of its assets with D&D Importer, but I can do it with Plutonium. Still not 100% as clean and well put together as if you buy the licensed Foundry content, but I mean, it's still a lot better than doing it from scratch. And if you only have to tweak things, then and it's free, then that's why a lot of people use this. Every dungeon master or game master I've ever seen that I've ever joined, they all have this module. I don't know if they use it, but I know they have it installed. And I think you saw, like, from your character, how it had the equipment shop. Did you ever see that? I think you did, right?
I think so.
That's from Plutonium. That's illegal. Yeah, because all of the items, Plutonium's completely broke for me right now because the equipment shop won't open either. But all those items are coming from Plutonium's database, from 5e Tools database. But if you as the player, if I can give you access to basically anything you want to pull down, then it keeps me from having to go and find it and import it and make it available and make sure the price is right and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's doing it all for me. So and obviously it's an incredible resource.
Yeah, that was super helpful. It's frustrating because I have like the literal books.
Yeah.
I have like a hard copy books. I even have both of the new Forgotten Realms. Like I have all that, and then to be like, oh well, now you got a digital copy 4 times. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. That's again, that's why I mean, I get why they push for, if you have the physical, that's only for physical games. If you want to play online and use that, then you need the digital. It sucks, but okay. But now I'm being forced to buy the digital content across multiple platforms. That is stupid. That's insane. And that's why using the Plutonium, I don't feel so bad about, because you literally are not breaking a law, but Foundry could cut you off if they wanted to from Foundry.
Which would suck.
Yeah. But they have no way of knowing what you do. And Foundry is so extensible, there's no way they could track what everybody does. So that's not going to happen. You just have to know, unlike me, not to bring it up when you're talking to people from Foundry.
Anything that would be considered like piracy or whatever, I'd be cognizant of that.
Yeah. And I totally get it. I totally get it. But
I have a freaking book. I have says do that.
I even went into the Plutonium configuration because there's an area, it's not obvious, but there's an area where it literally lists all of the source books, and I unchecked all the ones I don't own. That way I know for certain I'm not pulling in content that I have not paid for. But I mean, I know most people aren't doing that. Even if it's not intentional, I know most people aren't doing that. But
so is it best to have people create their characters within Foundry then?
yes. And it's best to have a clean world that has only what you need, no more, so that my worlds are way too junked up. I have too much stuff. Going forward, new worlds are going to be much cleaner. Like what you guys saw when I was going through creating characters for the hardcore, because those we did all in session, all within Foundry. That whole process forced me to understand even how to manage characters in Foundry, because I was doing everything in D&D Beyond. But once I understood how it worked, and of course at first I wasn't doing it efficiently, I was doing it the only way I knew, but over time got better and better with it. And then I understood the power of having the licensed Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide and all those other books. It made things like creating characters a lot easier, and the character ended up being very clean. Everything works the first time the way it's supposed to. Imagine that.
Well, I'm kind of hoping eventually to run a 5e campaign, or at least a one shot or something like that.
Yep.
But in person, the group that I actually play with in person, they're all used to 3.5. So probably what I'll